Near a small northern Ohio town, Harold and Elma Miller raised 10 children on their farm, 8 boys and 2 girls. Growing up in rural Ohio in the 30s, the children were taught the value of hard work, honesty, integrity, and loyalty. In short, doing what's right. 4 of the Miller boys became a part of the company that to this day maintains the values learned on that Ohio farm. Founded in 1953, Miller Pipeline has grown from a small gas pipeline contractor to a leader in the development, installation, and repair of pipeline products and services. In celebration of the 50th anniversary of the company, the Millers reflected on their experiences.
My father was a very successful farmer. He was the largest farmer around, but all the kids all worked hard. I know at the time I felt like I was didn't have it as good as my peers, that they could go out and play and do things that we couldn't do. We didn't have some of the things that neighbor kids had, and obviously my dad was in a position to afford much more, but that's not the way we were raised.
Well, we had to work at an early age, which, was a great help to us. Our parents' reputation was flawless for integrity. And, golly, most people called our dad Mr., just because of his reputation and the high respect he had.
Early on, I had been talking with another man that I worked with, and we talked about starting a company of our own. And we had lots of conversations, and I couldn't see eye to eye with the fella, and I ended up I didn't start in business with him, and he got 2 other partners and went off on his own. And the following year then, myself and a friend of mine, we formed what then was Miller and Crum Contracting Company.
And the year was?
1953. And we worked together the 1 year, and then I bought him out. And then it became Don W. Miller Incorporated. And we worked under that name for many years, but then we started Miller Pipeline Corporation in 1957. My partner Dick and I had formed this company, got financing, had to promise of work first, and then formed the company and got financing, bought the equipment, and then the company delayed the work. And we were sitting high and dry, and couldn't get any work. And as I'm 26 years old and look like a boy yet at that time, and I'd go to various companies and they would say, well, who have you worked for before? And I'd say, well, no one as a company, but I worked for such and such contractor, used to operate dozer, and I was a foreman once, and so on. And kind of got shown the door. And so I went into Buckeye Pipeline at Lima and met up with G.A. Scrafford, the vice president. And he was a crusty old guy, And he laid back in his chair and he says, well, who have you worked for before, Don? And I said, no one, and I never will till somebody gives me a chance. And I guess he liked that. And he says, well, we're thinking about doing a job down at Findlay, Ohio, with our own people. And he says, if you'd like to, you can give us a bid. But we want to start right away. And so he called, radioed somebody and had them meet me down at Findlay at the Ashland Refinery. We looked at the job, came home to Green Springs, Ohio, our headquarters, got my partner, took him up, showed him the job, put together a bid, took it in the next morning, Friday, and they accepted it, went back on Saturday, signed the contract, and on Sunday we were moving equipment, and we put people together, put a crew together. We didn't have a single employee.
And in the early days, most of our work was between towns, like the Buckeye job, and late that fall, our job in Anderson. It was actually from the edge of Anderson, is on what was called the Anderson Bypass.
The very first year we did a job in Indiana here, but we didn't have a base here. And the first out-of-state work would have been in Florida. It was for Jacksonville Gas Company. We laid a 12-inch from the city gate station into the center of Jacksonville. And that's where Dale got his wings, was down there on that job. I tell everybody I sent him down there as an office boy, and he come back as general superintendent. We had a superintendent down there initially, but everybody came to Dale for answers, it seemed, and eventually Dale was general superintendent over the whole works down there.
When I went to Florida is probably where I grew the fastest, because we got down on that job and it was unlike anything that we'd ever experienced. And the engineering company that was handling the job was very difficult. The head engineer, it was his first job, and it was very difficult. He was going by the book and wasn't giving us any slack at all. And by the end of the job, we'd won him over, and he became a booster of Miller. And I guess that was the time that I probably matured quicker. I mean, had to.
Dale became more and more important all the time, and Paul joined us in '57, and so he had responsibilities. Carl, of course, was with us from day one. But we had a number of superintendents that we hired. Everett Story was one of our old-time superintendents, and we hired a few other foremen or superintendents over the years. But having said that, I should say that most all of our people in Miller Pipeline Corporation are homegrown, and consequently, they're top-notch people. The biggest share of them started as laborers, and we found out if they were willing to work. And by and by, when we realized that they were intelligent and dependable, well, we kept bringing them up. And Dan Waters, who is now president of Miller Pipeline, started working for us as a welder helper. And he came all the way up through. And nearly all our supervisors started out working as laborers.
In 1954, I think, was the first year that we worked for Columbia. Back then it was a high fuel gas, now it's Columbia. And I think we worked for them every year since, haven't we? We haven't missed a year. We started in 1961 here with Citizens Gas, and we've done probably 75, 80% of all their work since then. And then Kokomo was 63. I'm not sure about Indiana Gas. It was back in the 60s sometime. But many of our customers have been with us. I think on some research that we did on the sales that something like over 60% of our revenues came from companies that we had been working with for more than 25 years or something like that. So,
Paul actually was the one that had come out here and promoted to work the first job at Indianapolis, and we came out here and we did our usual work, and they were just thrilled by the quality of our work and the fact that we cleaned up and straightened up the work afterwards and everything, and we could tell they really appreciated us, and they compared us with previous contractors, and we were looking great, and so they invited us back for more work. And the following spring we came out here in Claremont, and we rented a gas station, which is now part of our property here, and set up our headquarters, and we piped the town of Claremont for Citizens Gas and Coke. And we piped the whole town, and then they invited us for more work in Indianapolis. Because there's always been a strong feeling of trust between our company and our suppliers and our company and our customers. And it is, you've really reached now for the foundation of Miller Pipeline is integrity.
Our reputation and the fact that we took care of our responsibilities. If we agreed to do something, we always tried to do a little more.
To tell you the kind of trust that we had built up with our customers and our banks. I bought a couple $100,000 worth of pipe. I'm saying that much, I don't remember how much, way over 100,000, from a company down in Tennessee, and told them I'd pay them when I got my money. I wrote to them several times telling them, you will get your money. They never sent me a bill. When I got my money, I paid them off. So we got this check for $725,000, and all the money went out the door that same day. Yeah, and this was always our philosophy too, that, hey, if we have a customer that trusts us that much, we've got to be loyal to him and give him our best price. Because if he turns it out for bid and he gets 4 bidders of equal stature, we've got 1 chance in 4. So let's give him our best bid and keep it work to ourselves. The Suburban Gas Company, and they had done a job the year before, and we bid on it, and they elected to do it themselves by hiring a trencher and hiring a welder, and it turned out to be a disaster for them. So the following year they were going to pipe 2 towns, and Mr. Schwinn came out of the office and said, come get in my car, Don, I want to talk to you. And he says, Don, he says, you're not low bidder, but he says, we'd like you to do the work. And our reputation had already traveled, and this way we got a lot of work. So we piped these 2 towns, and we did better on the towns than I thought I would. Well, he had left out buildings for his regulator stations. He had 3 regulator stations on the job. And so his son-in-law came out there, and I said, don't say anything to Mr. Schwinn, but I says, he didn't have anything in here for regulator stations. And I says, I've done real well on this job, so I'm just going to buy 3 Parkersburg buildings and put them up for him free of charge. And which I did. The following year, they decided to do 5 towns plus 38 miles of transmission work, cross-country pipelines. And so we turned in a bid. Our bid was $1,049,000. The low bid was $999,000. They gave the work to us. And so the contract consisted of the work should be done by good pipeline practice, not a thick Bible of specifications or anything. And I told our employees, I said, Mr. Schwinn gave us this work because he trusted us and because of our quality. Let's make sure we do it right. And he didn't even have inspectors out there. And he owned a bank, and he'd come out every afternoon after the bank closed and drive around the job. And that was the extent of the inspection on $1 million job. But $1 million job was one big job back then. And considering the size of our company, it was one tremendous job.
Then I guess the most fun I had was when we started into products.
The biggest impact that it had on the company was the fact that it gave us name recognition. The actual profits on that type of business was not that great, not as good as our generic contracting business. But it gave us opportunities into a lot of companies that otherwise we wouldn't have had because we were calling on them on these products. And it gave us the reputation of being innovative. We brought a number of things to market here in this country. We've always been innovative in our equipment, have even helped develop some. And, I think that's been very good for our company.
Don got us started advertising in trade magazines. Yeah, the favorite ad was Miller was here. I've had the advertising guys out here, and they wanted to get acquainted with the company before they started doing any ads. So I had shepherded them around for, I don't know, 2 days here on different jobs. And we were coming in the second night, and I said, well, now you guys been out for 2 days. You ought to know all about this. I said, now you tell me where we laid the pipe. And then they generated it into our first national ad.
Culture is a hard thing to describe. It can be many things, but we've talked about the quality and integrity and so forth. We have a saying here at Miller that Don would rather receive a compliment on a job than a profit. Well, we don't know that he actually ever said that, but it doesn't really matter because that's what we believe. And the thing of it is, if you receive a compliment on a job and you do that consistently, you're probably going to be here for a long time. And where if you shoot for the almighty dollar on every job, bottom line, you may not be here too long.
There have been many cases where we have done more than what the contract called for. And I mentioned the work for Carl Schwinn where we put up the regulator buildings. It wasn't in there at all. I can think of another small gas company where, and this is in that bad year, 1954, and I was running a job myself, and it was a mom and pop organization, and the old man came out, and she told me, and we were laying, I'm thinking like 15 miles of 4-inch, and he came out and told me where the pipeline went through this particular farm. And the next day I'm laying the line there, and his son comes out and he said, "You got it in the wrong place, and it belongs over on this side of the fence." I said, "No, your dad was out yesterday and he told me where he wanted it." He back in his car, he goes into town and gets his dad out, and his dad said, no, I want it over here." Well, to this day, I know the man was confused because there was no question in my mind. I was building the pipeline. And so we argued about it. And it wasn't anything settled right then and there. Next morning, I went in the gas company office and I talked to the old man, John, and I could see I was going to lose this argument, win or lose. And I said, "Well, tell you what, John, you don't want the pipeline where it is. I'm going to take that up. I'll patch the coating and relay it where you want it. I'm going to do it free of charge. It won't cost you a dime." Big smile came on his face. It cost me $1,500 to do it. It was $1 a foot, and I was only getting 50 cents a foot to lay it in the first place. So I had to swallow the $1,500. But I'd say for about 25 years, they wouldn't call anybody but Miller to do their work.
And I think doing the right thing, not only with your customers, but also your employees. And you can go home at night, sleep, and just do the right thing.
Nothing finer than laying pipe with a good group of men and good equipment. I'd do it for nothing.
And I think that's the main thing. If you give a little more than what the bargain is, it's remembered a long time.
The Miller culture, as we call it, that was not something I coined. That phrase was coined here, but it's applicable. That the Miller culture of quality, integrity, and good work, and being fair to our customers.
Right from the start, Miller Pipeline grew on the qualities the four Miller boys learned on the farm: quality, integrity, honesty, trust, and loyalty. Put simply, doing what's right. Be assured Miller Pipeline Corporation will continue to honor its heritage for another 50 years and beyond.